Hello and welcome to Level Up and Friends, where those of us from the video game and comic book store Level Up Entertainment gather together some friends and discuss a new topic every week. To close out our month-long Spook-tacular, we're going to be talking about some horror comics this week. Probably what makes them tick and maybe give you some good recommendations. I'm your host, Scott, and joining me this week is Greg.
Hey, I'm Greg. I'm one of the owners of Level Up Entertainment, who brings you this great podcast.
Yes. I've also got our friends Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul. I am a person who shops at Level Up Entertainment.
And then we also have our friend Don.
Hey, what's going on? Customer and a fan. So
yeah. Let's say, Paul, I know you used to be on a podcast called As Somebody Who Doesn't Read Comics, and then you guys read too many comics, so you stopped doing it.
It got to a certain point where, like, it becomes a misnomer at that point. It's a whole legal thing, and we didn't want to really get into that. And so.
Yeah, I didn't want someone to sue you for false advertising.
Exactly.
And then Don, you've been a customer of ours for a while, and I know you've got like kind of a standing order for anything horror comics related comes out, you want to scoop it up.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's the genre that I fall into the most. I mean, I still like a good, regular comic like, Batman, Deadpool, but I mean, horror seems to be my go-to.
That's fine. Different genres to different people. So let's start it off a little bit. Like, what do you guys think? I'll ask one of you specifically at a time, so that way not everyone's yelling at once. We'll talk a little bit about what you think maybe makes a good horror comic, because I think there's two things that's very difficult to do well in comic books. That's comedy and horror, just because like the reader controls the pacing so much more than like the creators do, that like you can get the same book and like, oh, this is really funny, but then someone else kind of like reads it at a different pace. Like, this is lame, But like, what do you guys think makes a successful horror book? I'll start off with you, Greg.
I mean, I think what you said before is mostly true. People do read it at their own pacing, but I think the sign of a good writer-artist team can kind of cancel it out and make so everybody reads it at their same pace or gets the same type of comedy. I mean, they're few and far between sometimes. I mean, a good example, like, not that this is horror, but like Don brought up Deadpool. Like, I think for the most part, the early Deadpool stuff and some of the stuff now is done pretty well with comedic timing. I think the writer-artist combo, I remember the newest series, but like when Joe Kelly was doing it with Ed McGuinness, I thought that was pretty good stuff, and they did a good job of that. But yeah, with horror, what makes a good horror comic is not necessarily the scares, because scares don't, you can't really get scared through the comic. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's more about the theme, not the theme, the setting of the comic, and also if it gets really more into the mythos of that world they're building, whether it's a brand new world like in Nailbiter, who I'll talk about later, which I really enjoy, or stuff that's like Friday the 13th or Freddie vs. Jason. When Wildstorm did that, it went more into mythos of the characters, not just them killing, not Freddie just killing a bunch of kids, seeing some blood on the panels, and that's what it was. They actually went more into the characters and more about the villains or the protagonist and antagonist. To me, that's what makes a good horror comic.
Sure. What about you, Don?
I agree with Greg. A lot of it is with story too. I mean, a good story will grip you. I mean, artwork is also a plus, but then you got to also take into account, I mean, look at The Walking Dead. Walking Dead was done all black and white, except for the new releases that just came out, the deluxe ones, which are in color. Mm-hmm. But to me, I mean, there is, most every horror comic does have some kind of comedic tone to it. I mean, just like with the Hatchet comics that's been out lately, and they always throw in these little one-liners or just something goofy or something in the way. And that's like Greg was mentioning with the with Deadpool, like the earlier Deadpools, when of course he had to go against Dracula, and there was all those, the little comedic puns that happen. It's just, but to me, the thing would be story setting. I like the fact that they some actual horror comics actually go by like different folklores, different like urban legends that seem to go around throughout the world. And it's something that keeps you interested. If you can get into the character, if you feel like you're a part of that world, that, like Greg said, not to repeat him, it's just, You know, you got to have a story that grips you, something that's gonna, you know, take you in, and you're like, oh man, when you get to the end, you're like, okay, when's the next one coming? So
Yeah, I would say that when's the next one coming is probably what you want from any comic book you read.
yeah, true.
Um,
You know, author does have a lot to do with it too. I mean, I was actually, you know, I'm not one to follow a lot of artists as I do authors, but to find out that Joe Hill was the son of Stephen King and is part of Hill House Comics, that just really helped out because the two comics that he actually helped produce, you know, Basket Full of Heads and the other one, the Plunge, which was really good. I mean, it has that Stephen King-esque to it. So I mean, it really grips you.
and even in his less horrific stuff, like Lock and Key, you can still get a bunch of that Stephen King, like New Englandy vibes from it.
Yeah.
But Paul, I know you've actually been reading all of the Joe Hill stuff. But I'll ask you that question. We'll save it when we start talking comics more specifically. We'll definitely gonna. I was definitely gonna bring those up because I know Greg's also been reading them. I don't think he read all of them though.
Okay.
But what do you think like makes a good like horror comic?
Yeah, I definitely have to say the one thing that hasn't already been mentioned that I'll focus on a little bit is definitely the overall atmosphere of the book, because like an engaging story is always a wonderful component to have, because that's what, you know, have you keep coming back, but to actually be involved and like invested in how the characters are going to fare in the situations that they get themselves into, having that atmosphere just right. Now we mentioned Lock and Key, but I think it's the first volume where there's this, they actually managed to, and it's like one of the only times I can ever think of this happening, which is why I always bring it up, is they have one of the characters is talking into to a voice in a well, and then you turn the page, and then there's just the way the camera has shifted. The thing that you think is at the bottom of the well is coming out of the well behind, and it's one of those examples of having it at your own pace where you technically you're scaring yourself because this has been this whole dialogue back and forth, and you think that the thing in the well is stuck in the well, and then you turn the page and it's there. It's one of my favorite moments from that, just for that sense of just like shock and dread that comes from it. So at risk of rambling, I really feel that for a really successful horror story, having the setting well established and having that atmosphere around so that you can kind of feel like you're there definitely adds to that danger and thrill for the horror comics.
I would say I know that's always a thing. You mentioned Walking Dead's getting re-released in color now because, you know, maybe infamously was always black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I think color is going to take away a little bit from that. I think the harsh black and white, like with the heavy inks and stuff, I think gave it a real personality and a very distinctive look. I haven't read the color version, and you know we've got like 150 more issues to go, so maybe I'll be wrong. But I don't know. I think like that. And I also when I think horror art, and this also art's also very subjective, but I always really like Mike Mignola, like the really heavy inks and shadows. I think always go a really long way because, like, you know, if you count Hellboy as a horror comic, you know, if you count that kind of supernatural shenanigans as horror, which I think they fall under the horror is a big umbrella. I think that falls under that. Like I count Ghostbusters as like a horror comedy, and that's
Spawn.
not scary. Yeah, Spawn I put under that as well. Just, you know, a horror superhero. Yeah, those are all things that I think of when I think horror comics.
I'm sorry you guys hear barking. That's my mongrels.
Yeah, mine's poking her head onto the camera here. If I don't keep her petting, she will try to climb on my lap and it'll knock everything over and it'll be a big problem. Which may happen if there's an awkward cut. It means it might have happened and she's in my lap now. But very, very needy and very much attached to me. And now that I'm home, that's why it makes recording podcasts hard sometimes. She's gonna start barking at me to give her attention.
Okay, sounds good.
So now that we established a little bit about what we think makes, you know, a good horror comic, let's put it into practice and talk about some of the ones we really like and we would like to recommend to people. So I'll kind of go around the room. We'll each, we'll each pick one or two. We'll go around until we are tired. And then we'll just kind of do like our pitch and just basically sell it to each other. Obviously full disclosure, we didn't talk about these ahead of time. So I'm sure we'll have some overlap. If that happens, we'll just move on to the next thing when it comes back to your turn. And we'll just go into that. But let's start off with Paul.
Okay.
What's one you would like to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. The first that I would like to talk of the new ones, since we mentioned briefly the Hill House comics, out of the new slew that they've been doing there, I really enjoyed Basket Full of Heads. That was one that when the initial premise was kind of presented, I was admittedly a little bit like, okay, I'm not entirely sure where this is going, where anyone whose head basically gets decapitated by this ancient axe is still technically alive and able to communicate. And when I first, the first hearing the premise of that, I'm like, well, how often is that going to be, where you're running around cutting off people's heads with it? But the book does a great job of setting it as essentially it becomes a mystery story where your protagonist is going through and having to defend herself from this big conspiracy going on in a town, and she happens to defend herself with this weapon and then uses the heads that she starts to collect to get to the bottom of the mystery and why they're targeting.
So the heads that
her
she
and her
fills a
boyfriend.
basket with, right?
Yeah, yep, and it's one of those situations where, like we mentioned before, what you see is truth in advertising there, where she does end up with a basket full of heads. But yeah, it's a very I really enjoyed that one. The atmosphere in it is very good. There's little twists and turns with it, and it doesn't go into being gory, which is something that for me personally is a little bit off-putting with horror, is when it's just a blood fest. And so for this, even given the nature of what it is, never crosses that line into it being like a mess to look at.
Yeah, it's funny. You imagine, with rampant decapitations being like basically the main plot point, there'd be like blood everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like the bodies aren't ambulatory, are they? It's just the heads that are.
It's just the heads. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a because the axe and the overall element of that it's, I don't want to say, it's never right specified as like magic, but it's like, yep, the head's off, and then you don't really worry about the body, which may or may not be oozing over there. That's not the focus. So
Yeah, that's cool. I actually wasn't sure what that one's about, because when the Hill House comics were announced, I read all the descriptions, but like, oh my god, was that last year when they were like announced?
Yeah.
Everything kind of falls out of my brain at some point because I just working with comic books day in and day out. There's so many to keep track of. Greg, how about you? Is there one you would like to talk about?
Yeah, the first one I guess I will talk about is what I brought up earlier, Nailbiter from Image Comics.
Yeah, I know you really like Nailbiter. Its covers gross me out, so I don't like to. I don't want to look.
Yeah,
at
the
it.
covers are a little bit like grody, but I dig it. And there's a little more blood in it than what Paul's talking about in Basket Full of Heads. It's fairly violent, but it's not like the torture stuff like Hostel would be, or some of his other like really grody horror movies. So basically, it's about this town, Buckaroo, Oregon, who for some reason keeps producing serial killers. Like all these, like I think it was like 18 or 15, I forget exactly how many. For whatever reason, all these serial killers are coming from this town, and it's like a mystery about. And well, one of the biggest ones is actually called the Nailbiter, and what he does after he kills the person, he bites their nails. It's like a fetish to him, or a thing that he can't control. But not to get into like the story too much, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who wants to read it. But it's basically a mystery of like why this town does what it does, and why does it produce these horrible people or these horrible things who. And they kind of go into where like all these people didn't grow up as like nobody grows up as a serial killer, but it kind of shows like all these people and why and the house, and then kind of comes full circle with everything. And you do find out the reasoning behind it, which I really didn't think it was going to do. But it did a good job of wrapping itself up. And the cool thing is a sequel series called Nailbiter Returns just started about 6 or 7 months ago. I haven't got a chance to read it yet, so I'm not exactly sure what that next story is about. But the first one it ran for like six volumes, so it's like 36 issues or so. So it's not like, doesn't overstay its welcome, which like a lot of superhero comics do. Horror comics is one good thing. I would say they don't really overstay their welcome for the most part. It kind of does their story and moves on. But I would highly recommend Nailbiter. I thought it did a really good job of the pacing of the book. There was really no slow areas where it's like, okay, let's keep moving. Like, I didn't feel like it was grinding its gears, like kind of spinning its to make it go longer. It's like, okay, he had a story to tell, he told it, and now it's over. Which I really enjoyed about that part of it. It didn't seem like there was any like Dragon Ball Z powering up thing, or just mindless exposition about whatever. It kind of made its point and finished it up.
Well, it seemed like it had a story to tell, and then it told that story. We should also probably mention that's an Image comic, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Image comic from Joshua Williamson, who is actually writing. He just finished his writing up on Flash from DC. He's done a lot of other books too, which I can't remember off the top of my head. He's done a bunch of horror stuff too. So
yeah, I know he was on that Flash for a long time. And the Hill House books are published by DC Comics. Probably should, we're comic book stories, should probably mention how like easy ways to find them.
we have at the Level Up Entertainment in Hamilton Mall.
We do have both of those, and you can buy it on our web store, shoplevelup.com.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So Don, how about you? What's one you would like to bring up for the fine folks at home?
Well, there's so many, but one of my favorites out of the Hill House comics would be The Low Woods by Carmen Machado. Is that it kind of has like a little bit, because it's set in the 90s, and it's about two best friends that wake up in a movie theater. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything because it's first basically page, and they have no memory of what happened the past few hours. And then come to find out, it's what it's all about. It's about them trying to solve the mystery of why people's memories are being eaten away. And it's not everybody, it's just certain people. And the thing that I thought was kind of cool about it is it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Silent Hill type setting, because not only because just like with Silent Hill, it was set in PA in a mining town, but the mining town itself, there's a big fire underneath that won't go out. So just like with Silent Hill, you have all this stuff going on. But I mean, you don't have no trans-dimensional stuff like with Silent Hill, but just the feel, the atmosphere, it gives you that kind of vibe. But these girls, they have to work together. Elle and Octavia, they call her V. That's the whole premise. That's the whole thing. It's about them finding out what is causing this and what's going on.
Gotcha. Say, because I think all three of you now have read at least most of the Hill House books. Is there like a unifying like thread or theme from them?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so. They're all pretty much written. Like Joe Hill does, the one book or two books, and there's the backup. So, and I think he curated it. Like he helped, I think he helped the writers like flesh out the stories. But there's no, from what I'm aware of, there's no like tying. Like, oh look, it's the shared universe type thing.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean shared universe, but they're all like, because I'm not to compare him to Stephen King, which is why
I got you saying.
I'm sure he changed his name, but like there's like they've got kind of like a similar like style, like his.
No, they all feel very different, which is good.
Which is good, because then maybe there's like something that might be for everybody there then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like older horror, like more of a Victorian era, like the Dollhouse Family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
say, if you guys want, let's just go down the list of them and just knock them out of the way. Let's talk about Daphne Byrne then.
Okay.
I haven't read any of these, so I'm gonna need somebody to jump in and explain them. Paul, you want to do that one since you seem to be pretty gung ho?
Sure. Yeah, I can give it a shot here with that. So in order to keep this, again, vague, but essentially Daphne Byrne, this is our much more, if you like the older, more Victorian, almost Gothic horror-esque kind of look to things, where Daphne Byrne is living with her mother and essentially like a nanny caretaker, and they were a previously well-to-do family, but after the passing of her father, they're starting to their social status is slipping, and Daphne is very obsessed with the things her father told her, and is focused on trying to wanting to keep him in her life, and in doing so she meets with this almost otherworldly presence that speaks to her in dreams, and she starts seeing these visions of like flesh, essentially like people as creepy monsters with flesh peeling off of them. And it's this, so it's without going too much into it, she starts to work with this other presence in order to try and help her family's situation and to protect basically to protect them as her mother and others get into little trouble.
So it's like a lot of like body horror in it.
It's not quite body horror.
Really,
it's it's not. It's not quite body horror so much as there is some definite. It definitely has a strong look to it, in which there is a definite, I guess, decay would be the best way to there's a lot of more skeletal and husk looking things. I will say I thought the art in this one was very interesting, though, because it put a lot of focus more on the characters. The backgrounds, there was a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with the other presence, was a little bit less detailed, especially like her dreams, which was kind of an interesting take to it. But yes, I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to add on that, or if that was a.
I to be honest, I haven't finished all of them, but that's a pretty good description without getting into the nitty gritty of it.
We'll say that reminds me a little bit of like something from like the SCP universe, so I'm kind of interested in that one.
It deals in with the occult and everything a little bit, the supernatural.
Yeah, it's more where my tastes kind of lie. Greg, was there another one that you read that you haven't discussed
finished
yet?
I haven't finished this one yet, but I can give you a synopsis of the Dollhouse Family.
Give us the pitch on it. Yeah.
The pitch is basically there's this family who there's this dollhouse, and there's this family, whether they live in the dollhouse per se or if it's a different universe or whatever, there's these entities that live in this dollhouse, and they've been living in this dollhouse, and this one, the main character, growing up with this and going back, and there's this malevolent entity inside of it who's trying to bring her back in for certain reasons throughout her whole life. And then other people go like, this entity really wants this the main character, not like other people, because there's other people who kind of want to go in, and the entity's like, nah, I'm good, and just kind of kills him or makes him crazy or whatever else. Is the elevator pitch. I think that's pretty close to what I'm about halfway through it, 3/4 of the way through it. I forget exactly where I'm at, but it's definitely like it's another classical style horror trope with like the dollhouse and the haunted house and that kind of stuff. But it does have a lot of a little more supernatural, a little more to it than just the standard haunted dollhouse type thing.
Sure. Let's see. How many more do we have left to cover from them? I've lost track.
There's the Plunge, which I didn't read, and there's the Sea Dog, which is in the back.
Yeah.
And there's another one, or forget.
There was what was the last one? There was Plunge, Daphne Byrne, Dollhouse Family. We mentioned Basket Full of Heads.
Yeah.
I think just Sea Dogs and Plunge, right? The two water ones.
Yeah, I think that's it. No, I think that's it.
So, Don, you want to take the lead on those guys?
One that I like with Greg, I didn't finish reading, but one that I really got involved in was the other one that Joe Hill did, was the Plunge. The short, quick synopsis: tsunami happens, and after the tsunami happens, they get like rescue barge gets a distress signal from a ship that apparently that disappeared over 40 years ago. And they go to investigate it, and things happen. And the way this reads, without giving anything away, is if you guys remember the movie Event Horizon, which was a good sci-fi horror,
Great movie.
Yes, where they get a distress signal from a ship that disappeared 40 years later, they go, or not 40 years, but 7 years later, they come back and all this stuff's going on, or even Ghost Ship, where, they find this ship in the Bering Strait, and it's got the same feel. It's not overly gory. I mean, there is some blood, there is some stuff that goes on, but it's not like, for lack of better words, like that horror porn, like Saw and Hostel and everything, like you guys said.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's like more of a mystery, it's actually pretty decent, but at a horror level.
Yeah, and then the last one they did was Sea Dogs, which was distributed rather uniquely. It's like, what was it, 2 pages per issue? But it was like a
Yes.
backup story in every single one of these Hill House books that we've discussed. So it's going to be coming out in trade as its own thing. So you basically if you bought all of them, you got like a free bonus story. But like, that one sounded kind of interesting. Isn't it something like I remember it was kind of Cthulhu Mythos-esque, if I remember correctly.
It's basically werewolves who won the Civil War. No,
During the Revolutionary
Revolutionary
War, during the British invasion and everything, takes place in 1779, I think.
yeah. But it's like werewolves, and they use them for a mission, and as far as I'm into it, like really nothing's happened yet except they're on the ship. One of the werewolves killed somebody else. And that's kind of where I'm at, so I can't really explain the rest of it.
It's a little like the movie Dog Soldiers.
Yeah, great movie.
I saw that once when I was working at Blockbuster, and it was someone's last day, so we're like, let's put on R-rated movies. So I saw it, but I didn't like sit down and pay attention to it. It's one of the things, like I was like, this seems cool. I kind of want to go back and like watch it and enjoy it, but because it's different when you're like at work and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But that sounds cool. So that's the the Hill House books. Not necessarily all from Joe Hill, but like you said, he's kind of the guy that was in charge of that imprint. Kind of like how Gerard Way also is for DC for Young Animals. But let's move away from that world a little bit. Don, what's one you can give us?
I actually have been a big fan of like the Army of Darkness, Death to Army of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to do with Ash Williams fighting the Deadites, and just the comedic puns that are in it are just great. It's really well written. It's kind of like just an extension of the Evil Dead universe in Army of Darkness. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it stays away from the gore, but it still has the horror feel. It's just typical, Ash Williams. And if you're a fan of the show and the movies, then I suggest it. It's a good read.
Yeah, the show's really good. I finally got around to watching it last year.
The show is great.
It's hysterical.
It's funny because I know Ash kind of gets around a little bit in the comics, but like it's weird how without derailing too much in the nitty gritty, like the license for Army of Darkness and Evil Dead are 2 different things, even though it's got the same character in it. Which is why, like in the first season of Ash versus the Evil Dead, they don't reference Army of Darkness at all, and then later, because it's a hit, they were able to, like, I think Paramount was like, oh, now we can make this movie a part of it as well. But because of that, like, he shows up in other things. Like there was a Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness, which was a lot of fun. I really liked that one. And then there was a Freddie versus Jason versus Ash, which was like a thing that's been in a movie that was in development hell for forever. They eventually made it in comic book form. Basically, like Ash kind of gets involved with like the survivors support group from the Friday 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street series. It's been a long time since I read it. I do know it winds up in Washington. But yeah, basically like he teams up with their other survivors to beat Freddie and Jason at the same time. But that one was a lot of fun. I don't think that one can be in print just because the licensing, again, so it's been like the better part of 20 years since that came out. I think that was the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
But Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness was in print for a while. It might still be available. But I guess with that, one of my yeah. What's up? I was gonna say, well, I was gonna recommend then, the Marvel Zombie series, which just came back with a reboot, Marvel Zombies Resurrection.
Yep.
So it's spun out of a pretty stupid alternate Fantastic Four story, where they're finally teasing over like they were going to cross over with the Fantastic Four, making you think it was going to be the normal ones. But then it turns out it was like some evil zombie versions of them, and like their whole world, the zombie plague hits the superheroes, and because they're superheroes, like they just eat everybody because like normal people can't stand up to them. So they still keep their personalities and superpowers. So like the Hulk like is a giant hulking like monster and just eats everything.
Like a
But
Resident Evil.
yeah, but like so the story picks up like in the beginning of it was just Marvel Zombies in one, because they did it like little different miniseries. At the end of that, like Magneto's kind of like the last savior of humanity. And then for the irony. So the last surviving, like the main like zombies, it's like what, Captain America, Spider-Man, Hulk, Iron Man, Giant Man, Wolverine. I think that's it. They kind of then defeat Magneto and like, well, now there's nothing left to do. Like they've eaten everyone on the planet. So it's just kind of them all sitting around and like trying to science their way out of things. It turns out in this universe, Galactus has never shown up. No one's ever left the planet. So Galactus shows up and then it's like, oh, now we've got this dude to eat. But oh, I'm sorry, Silver Surfer shows up first. And it's like they can't like bite him because he's this like silver space alien. I don't know. It's worth seeing. Like the characters in it are very, very evil. So it's a fun twist, but like they still have like their personality that they had. Like, if that makes any
Then
sense.
they had that spin-off with Deadpool versus the Marvel Zombie Universe.
Oh yeah,
And
during Secret Wars, right?
yes, and he was like the only one that was immune to everything, which was kind of cool.
I don't think they ever showed, because there was like 5, maybe 6 Marvel Zombie series over the time. I don't remember Deadpool ever showing up in them. I know that Deadpool had a zombie head called Headpool. No, yeah, I guess that's where he came from, the Marvel Zombies. So there was a zombie Deadpool. But I know there was like Deadpool team up. He was like one of the Deadpools that he'd be with.
Yeah, because like they all jumped him, they ate him, and he just healed himself. And they were like, "Why didn't he turn?" And of course, Deadpool has his slick sayings, and it just goes on from there. And he's trying to help save humanity.
But yeah, no, those
So
were surprisingly good. I enjoyed them a lot.
Uh,
The premise
also,
sounds-
as a quick, as a quick thing, if you're a DC fan, they just recently did the Deceased, which is sort of kind of like Marvel Zombies, but with the DC characters. Long story short, basically the anti-life equation goes horribly wrong, and it makes this like this techno-organic.
Yeah, because doesn't like
to borrow
Cyborg...
a term from Cable, it's like a techno-organic virus that makes the DC universe into zombies, and they just like they want to eat people like zombies do.
Yeah, because isn't it like Cyborg gets the equation in his like computer brain, and like it makes him go insane, and like he uploads it to the internet, and then anyone that like
so they destroy the whole internet.
Yeah,
and then there's some surviving heroes, and then there's been a couple sequels after the
as right now the current one's
but as a quick aside.
Yeah, that one's similar to that. I haven't read that yet.
It's good, but it's like DC more than Marvel. That's a good one to jump on if you're looking for like.
You get to see. I think Batman's one of the first main guys that succumbs to it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Spoilers. No, it's on the cover of issue 1.
He's on the cover of issue 1. So then again, sometimes covers don't necessarily are indicative of what's going to be in the book. Sometimes.
Well, that one was. So
that one was, yes. But yeah, so those are some good ones. I got one in there too. Paul, how about you? Is there another one you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I know this might be cheating a little bit, but I was pleasantly surprised when it happened. One of the things that got me into all of these, the comics, is I was a big fan of Joe Hill's, his books like Horns and Nosferatu, which absolutely wonderful plugs there. But going back to Lock and Key, they're doing I guess it's a mini series of it from IDW, where it's set as events that happened before the events of Lock and Key, but from earlier ancestors of the group that we follow in more of the present day of the main series. So it's essentially all of the key-based shenanigans of Lock and Key, but set where one of the Locke family is trying to get involved in World War One. Mm-hmm. So it's bringing all of that into how that would have how that impacts the the way that the war goes. There's been 2 issues that I've read so far of it, and I've really been enjoying it. I was a little bit nervous because I love Lock and Key, so when they were adding extra stuff to it, I'm always a little hesitant when you
Yeah,
kind of open.
I get the same way. Like, oh, it's done. Don't.
Yeah,
It's
so
good. Leave it alone.
yeah, it's like please, because the win-loss ratio of when that when you decide to open up that story again is a little shaky.
Well, preview for a podcast in a couple of weeks. They tried it twice with Star Wars, and I think it failed both times. But that's for the future discussion.
But yeah, so far, because it's none of the same characters. This is more of just a set in the same universe kind of thing. So
because they establish in Lock and Key proper that they have that one key that lets you like see events from the past, but you can't influence them, but you get to witness them.
Yes,
I think that's what they're doing with this. So it's still like the main kids are just kind of seeing this, right?
It wasn't set up like that in a framing device, but it very well could end up being.
Oh,
that.
I just assumed when I heard the premise, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You can just watch anything from the past.
Yeah, and like I said, it may end up where that ends up being how this ties in a little bit more. But as it currently stands, it's been a kind of a standalone story of like that particular generation living in the Locke family house, and we'll see how that ends up. If they do any like kind of Easter egg tie-ins towards the end. But so far, I've really been enjoying it, and having finished, like I said, I only finished 2 issues so far, but by the 2nd issue, I was going like, okay, cool. We're not trying to untie previous strands and everything.
I think as of this recording, there's only 2 issues that have come out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of the books that got delayed from COVID.
Every book got delayed from COVID.
Yeah.
Well, one of the books, I mean, yes, everyone did, but it's one of the ones like some books got back quicker than others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, who else has got one? Who hasn't done it?
I got a couple.
All right. Oh,
I think we all do, huh, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay,
I got a couple more.
Why don't you hit us up real quick then?
All right. Well, first I'm going to do first I'm just going to quickly go over. It's not exactly horror per se, but it does a good job of like. It's basically a story about like. Well, I guess I'll show you the title of the book first.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Martian Manhunter from DC.
Okay.
It has a lot of horror tones to it. Basically, it's this Martian, like the Martian Man does something really bad back on Mars. It kind of follows him to Earth. This character Chiron is basically like this. Basically, like, want to think of like a thought zombie type of or a thought vampire, and like he's just trying, he's doing bad things to people to make them do bad things. So that's kind of horror-ish, but not exactly horror. But I just wanted to bring that up one real quick. The one I did want to talk about a little more, actually there's 2, but I can wait for it next time around. The first one I guess I'll do is The Spread from Image. It's very similar to The Walking Dead, except that in this, it's like this thing that takes over somebody's body. It's like a body horror type thing. So it's like this disease that takes over people and kind of consumes them, and it's like a sentient thing. The main character basically gets thrown into this because like he's like a loner, like a Wolverine type of character, but he finds this woman with this baby, and apparently the baby cannot become infected. So the blood, like a kind of a trope, but the baby's blood can save the world. But like it goes through this whole thing. It's definitely body horror. It's definitely a little more gruesome looking. But the visuals are really neat looking. So it's just like you see all these the artists, I forget off the top of my head who it is, but like really makes cool monsters and make these cool like body horror, like body contortion with the big villains and the bad guys in the book when they take over somebody's body. It's really cool looking. And it's another book that went on for just enough where it's like it told story and was done. Again, another Image comic. I think Image probably does some of the best horror comics recently. There's other companies who like do that, but I think Image does a really good job of horror right now.
I think
so
Dark
I'd really
Horse
recommend
has a pretty good history.
Dark Horse does, definitely. Dark Horse does, and there's some companies that
so
just
much now, but I mean, Dark Horse up until
Alien right now.
I would say, well, Dark Horse up until very recently was doing all the Alien books. Now Marvel. Now that Disney owns more things, they own Fox, which is where Aliens were from. and that stuff's going over to Marvel. We just, announced all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Alien 3 one, which is the screenplay, the one where they redid the Alien 3, it was the screenplay for Alien 3 that never came to light. They produced it in the comic, and the other Alien one, which was done by Dan O'Bannon, the original creator of
Yeah.
Alien, they were done by Dark Horse. Marvel, I don't think had.
Oh yeah,
anything.
I think those were already in the works. Like this Marvel
Yeah.
thing's just kind of been revealed.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh yeah, I just realized because of Disney, Marvel keeps getting all of Dark Horse's big license things. They lost Star Wars, they had that for forever. Now Marvel does the Star Wars books. But anyway, we're getting off topic there. Unless John, did you want to talk about the Alien comics?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of the sci-fi horror, I mean, there's nothing better than a creature that is basically everybody's worst nightmare. I mean, it can live in any atmosphere. I mean, the way it infects you is pretty disturbing. But there's so many like side issues that, like for instance, I mean, they morph so many comics in with aliens, just like with the Predator. Like there's Aliens versus Vampirella, which was really good. Aliens versus Wildcats. There's all these different.
Oh yeah, they get around in the comic book.
Yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
they're like the they're like the I won't even go there, but
Yeah, no, but like versus aliens is like, and same thing with Predator. I think aliens get around more. But usually they wind up going together to like Aliens versus Predator versus Batman, Superman, like stuff.
Yeah.
There's things like that all the time. Like,
but the original. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I will say I'm sort of not excited for them to be at Marvel just because Marvel's got the Brood, which are very clearly just aliens.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point? So maybe we'll get Alien versus Brood, and then I don't know.
Yeah. How about Alien versus Brew?
There you go.
Character Brew, he's awesome.
Who's Brew?
Oh, you should read about him. He was introduced in Wolverine and the X-Men, but that's another topic again.
But the one that's a mutant Brood who's like a good guy.
Yeah,
I forgot.
Really
I forgot
smart.
his name was Brew. I thought you were saying he should fight Groot. I'm like, I'm sure that they will because you can kill. Groot's one of the ones you can kill and he can just come back.
Yeah,
you're not gonna have a xenomorph force burst through Iron Man's suit.
That'd be cool though.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
But yeah, so I know they've been doing like a lot of the original screenplays, adapting them into stuff. I know Alien 3 is one of the ones that like everyone hates the movie.
The comic was great.
Yeah, so I'll at least say that movie's controversial because I think Alien 4 is the one that's really bad, right?
Oh yeah,
I'll say Alien 3 I think is a little more controversial. I know it's not as beloved as the first two are.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I'll just say it diplomatically enough like that. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I watched it, so I don't want to. Because if I watch
they're
it,
not classics like 1 and 2.
Yeah, if I watch it now, I might be like, oh, I kind of like that, but
3 wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But then when they hit Resurrection, I'm like,
well, I think because everyone loves Aliens, and Aliens is like the action version, and for lack of a better term, it's a little bit more fun. And then Alien 3 is really depressing. As like I think it's just people just had like whiplash. And I think it's gotten a lot more attention over the years. But Alien 4 is the one that's like terrible.
Yeah, well, I know in one of the comics, I know because they go on like there's one called Dead Orbit, and then there's another one. I'm drawing a blank here, but they all run together, and it takes place like right after the Sulaco missions, and because they're going to investigate. And in the comics, I forget which one it was, they actually go back to Alien 3 talking about how it was all really just a dream. And that's what they're trying to do with that's what they said they were trying to do with the next movie. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Have you guys read Walking Dead? Figure that might be like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Yes.
I read it.
I read the first couple of trades back before it became real popular, and I was like, this is okay. I don't know. I guess it's better than I thought it was going to be because it lasted so long.
Well, yeah, I that's like kind of talking back. Like he really does he takes the zombie genre and kind of really he doesn't change anything, but he makes it interesting and makes these characters you like this is one of the books where I cared for these characters, and when one of them died, I felt bad.
Yeah.
Like even like
Yeah.
the bad characters, like I remember. I'm not going to say what happened because I don't want to spoil for anybody who hasn't read it yet. But if people have read it, will know. It was like 30 or 40 issues in, maybe part of the prison when that whole thing happened, and when they were escaping, that thing happened, and that I had to stop reading for like a week because that scene took me back. Like, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah,
and
that's the one thing.
And like I couldn't, like I felt so emotionally drained, and that's one of the comics I would say like is really not. It wasn't hard, but it was just like I couldn't keep reading because I was so emotionally drained from that scene and for what happened. I was like, I got to stop for a minute, and I'll talk about it off if you want to know.
I actually had a very similar experience to that playing the first season of the Telltale game.
Oh God,
like,
yes.
Like I made a decision and I was like, I can't believe I just did that, and I had to put it down. I walked away. Because I was trying to play him as myself, so I could quickly make the decisions I would make.
And this is a whole other,
this
is a whole other conversation, but that's why the other ones didn't do as well. Because the first one I played as me and what I would do, where the other ones I played as that character. And in the first one, I'm not afraid to say it, I cried at the end. I was tearing.
Oh, I was a wreck at the end of it. After I was done, I was like, that was amazing. I will never replay it.
No, great game. That's another not here nor there. It's not a comic.
But all right. So I only read up until they got to the prison, because my buddy Kendall was buying the trades at the time, so I was just kind of reading them when he got them, and then he stopped getting them. I was just like, well, I don't feel like continuing. But I was a big fan of Robert Kirkman because I loved his Invincible that was going on at the time. But it was just one of those things where I was like, all right, I get it. There's going to be zombies and people just kind of going. I will say that I prefer, from what I've read of the comic, I very much prefer it to the TV show. Because the comic, I think its biggest strength is nobody is safe at any given moment. Like, but the show, like, people continue to live because they have to fire somebody. And it's just like, I don't know. They get into like the melodrama of it a little too much in the show. Whereas in the comic, I think there is stuff like that. Like, there's character interactions. Like, you wouldn't have had that feeling if you didn't care about those characters. But obviously I'd never got anywhere near Negan, which is like the breakout character everyone loves. Who's still running around because he gets, one shot every once in a while.
Yeah, I found the one thing that speaking about like the ending of the prison and the events that happened there made me, when watching the show, feel like a terrible person because I kept wondering like, oh, how are they going to do that?
Yeah.
How are they going?
Yeah.
Is it happening now? And I wasn't like rooting for it, but I kept waiting like, oh, this scenario could be. Oh no. Oh.
You remind me of those of us that like knew about the Red Wedding when the Game of Thrones happened.
Oh yeah.
Just kind of waiting for it to see what people's reaction is going to be. Because granted, I didn't read the book, but I know exactly what moment you guys are talking about. And yeah, I was thinking the same thing even not watching the show. I was like, are they going to have the balls to do that on television? Like, I don't think they did, if I remember correctly, because I was kind of really just waiting for the social media to explode.
Yeah, well, that was like one of the scenes that for fans of the comics and even people that never read the comics that loved the show, that was one of the scenes that really, like Greg said, was emotional to everybody, to where that's all everybody talked about until the season started again. That was like the first thing as soon as you brought up The Walking Dead that everybody wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those, even the series itself was not immune to just randomly dying unexpectedly, because we didn't know that the last issue of it was going to be the last issue until it came out.
Yeah, that was a total surprise.
We would have ordered more of them because we sold out pretty quick.
Like, literally, all Image said was, order big. This is going to be something big is going to happen. Order more than you usually do.
But that's comic book speaking, like everything, whenever something they want you to buy happens.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to ignore.
And I did a little more, but I definitely I could have done a lot more.
Yeah. But that was, I don't want to say that was a fun surprise, but like, that's not something that because we have to, we order comics 2 months in advance before they get to shelves. Like, so we kind of know where a lot of things are going.
I mean, it says that it takes a lot of balls to do that, because that comic was the best-selling Image comic for Image. Like, it's best sold better than most other Marvel DC
they really
books. And it's like, oh, we're done.
They committed to it too, because they solicited issues after that.
They did.
Yeah. So like that's not. I didn't. None of us thought that was going to happen.
I had
And-
so many customers call me up and go, "Oh, so when's issue 194?" They solicited. I'm like, "No, that was all fake. That was all fake. 193 is the last one." Like, no. So I'm like, "No, I'm telling you."
Yeah, it's. I want to take your money. I believe me.
Yeah.
Well, so without going to spoilers, do you think it had you? Were you satisfied with the conclusion?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was.
Because it went almost 200 issues. That's a long time. Like
I didn't want it to end, but it ended in a way where I was satisfied.
Okay. Just wanted to give people that in case you decide to read it. It's like what, 33 volumes?
A lot.
Yeah.
Unless you buy the compendium, then it's just 4.
Yeah, that's 4. The compendiums are your best deal. Like we broke it down like price per book, like per issue in it. Like it's the
But definitely
way to
is,
go.
yeah.
But you
Yeah.
pay a lot more upfront.
Yeah.
Because I think they're like what, $60 a pop. I should know
Mhm.
offhand. But
Yeah, it's just like carrying 4 encyclopedias.
Yeah.
it's a lot of comics. It's what, yeah, like I said, almost 200.
Yeah.
Because they also ended it on just a random weird number. Like you
Yeah,
figure,
193. Yep.
yeah, like
Yeah.
not go all the way, to the next. Anyway, I guess Robert Kirkman was like, I'm done with this. Let me end it.
Yeah.
And more power to him. I mean, he's one of the guys in charge of Image now because that book was so huge.
Yep.
So that's why I kind of figured we should do it. And I guess, are you guys gonna get all of the issues again in color this time?
Oh,
Nope.
I am.
Yeah.
I can't. I got to. I mean, I'm a
Fair
fan.
enough.
Yeah, that's fine. Even if I would like that, I was like, I don't know if I can buy that many comics again. But yeah, I'm curious to see how color affects it. I mean, granted, it's one issue that's been out so far as of this recording. But like I said, I like the black and white. I think it makes it more moody and bleak. And if I want to get artsy fartsy, like, oh, their world has become more black and white now. It's survival or don't. If you want to look at it that way. I mean, I also huge Ninja Turtles fan. Their classic comics were black and white, but that was just because it was more expensive to print in color. But yeah, I figure we all. I would recommend Walking Dead, even though I didn't read a lot of it. If that seems like something you have a mild interest in, go for it. There's a reason it went over 15 years. Like that's insane for a creator owned. Like it's Image. We stretch independent a little bit, but like something that's not super. Like it's not Marvel and DC. Like takes. Like usually things like that don't go on that long. It's rare. I mean, I guess Image really has them.
The only other ones are Savage Dragon and
Spawn. Yeah. Also Image. Yeah.
Spawn's what, 300 and something now?
Spawn's this week's going to be 311. So
Yeah.
by the time you listen to 311 had just come out because it has the Chadwick Boseman cover. Which if we still have some available at this point, we are donating the proceeds to our local Big Brother Big Sisters chapter. So this goes up on Friday. It'll come out on Wednesday. Maybe we'll still have some. We did order a lot, but this book's getting a lot of people want it. So we'll see. Which Spawn's kind of a horror character. So it's related. A character that comes from hell. So there's nothing scarier than that, right?
Yeah.
But let me give some of my series recommendations because I have a couple. So this is gonna show like more than my style. I love the old Vertigo horror books a lot. Specifically Sandman, which started as a horror comic but more turned into dark fantasy. But like that, if you get the first trade paperback, like, oh my god, the diner issue, like is so like, oh, it's so freaky. Like I remember reading that when I was younger. I was like, oh my god, like it. Well, I don't want to get into spoilers on it, but it's really good. Also, really love I think they call it Saga of the Swamp Thing now. The Alan Moore Swamp Thing run, I thought was like legitimately really atmospheric. I thought a lot of the monster stuff in it was really cool. Like there's a part with like this, it's a twist on a mermaid. So it's like this like old bloated hag that's always pregnant is like in this lake and it gives birth to monsters and it's really gross and like, I don't know, you feel really sick. It's
sounds like something from The Witcher.
Yeah, they seem. I don't know. I highly recommend both of them, and I recommend Sandman to anybody. Basically, I mean, it's definitely for adults. It's not for kids, but it like I said, gets more into dark horror. Again, yeah, he takes over hell for part of it. So, we can get to that a little bit. But it's also they're also in the DC universe, so sometimes you get to see a familiar face. Like for example, Constantine comes from that run of Swamp Thing. They keep trying to make him into like a star. But yeah, who else has got one?
I know we kind of touched on it briefly, but it's definitely a different kind of horror than we've been discussing, and from the Hill House run, which is again where I'm going to draw most of mine from. But I really wanted. I know you guys haven't finished yet, but the Plunge is very good. That's like the most, I want to say, Stephen King-esque kind of horror with it. There's with a nice little touch of like the supernatural kind of cosmic horror elements with it too. And I know we talked about it briefly already, but just it fills a lot of the basic like adventure tropes, the different characters going in and trying to essentially uncover what happened. And for me, those are like some of my favorite kind of horror, like the mysteries where your characters get kind of like thrown into the middle and you're trying to figure it out, kind of like I guess in movie terms you got like the Thing, right? You got like it's where like you end up, your characters go there, they run into something they were not prepared for, and then next thing you know they're trying to survive it. Like it's got that kind of same kind of element of horror with it. And like I said before, coming off of like Nosferatu and Horn's Heart-Shaped Box, those kinds of stories. What I like about the Plunge in particular is that it gives you just enough information as it goes without spoiling the unknown. As I think that's gonna be the best way I can describe it. Is yeah, for me, horror. So many times I love like the first 2/3 of horror movies or the first 2/3 of things like that. But then once you know everything, it kind of loses some of the oomph. And I feel like the Plunge straddles that line pretty nicely, where you have that group of people stuck in a situation where they're trying to figure out what they need to do to survive. And as you learn more, there's still more questions to be answered. So that would definitely be of the Hill House line, definitely one of the top ones there.
Yeah, I would say like that kind of touches on what I think makes some horror stuff stronger than others is like having very specific kind of like not necessarily rules, but like here's this situation and here's how it works, and then like how do you work against it.
Yeah.
We touched on it a little bit in the Friday 13th discussion we did, where sometimes like let's kind of make it up as you go. That to me is way less interesting. Like Jason's a different character like every movie. And like Freddie, like he has those rules, but because you can kind of do whatever, it makes it kind of like you can only really fight him in one way. Where it's like we got to pull him into the real world and kill him. Like, after you get like 10 movies, it's like, all right, just do another Looney Tunes-esque kill scene and I'll be happy. But, like that's not scary, Whereas like the Thing, like they kind of go out of the way to establish like how it works, and like they give you enough of the characters that like you kind of get why they're paranoid of each other and why it's so good. Or like even we talked about Aliens earlier.
Yeah,
talking about the first one, you get to spend so much time with these characters, but also because you don't really know in the first movie, at least you don't really know how the xenomorph is. Like you discover it with the characters and it's like horrifying to them, so it's horrifying to you.
Yeah,
I will say like Aliens is one of the ones like as they go on, like you kind of know more and more about how they work, and now it's like they're not nearly as scary, in my opinion. But yeah, unless anyone's got anything else they want to touch on.
I got one more also. The last one I want to talk about is Gideon Falls from Image also.
I was kind of hoping
Meyer
you
writes.
bring up Gideon Falls.
It's like it's hard to explain what it is, but it's like Twin Peaks-ish.
Yes.
But with time travel or dimensional travel, possibly.
Oh, so Twin Peaks-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. So it revolves around these 5 characters, and this black barn that pretty much is like a gateway to this evil entity. Again, another evil type of entity. I'm not sure who it is yet, like what it is, because like right now, the issue I'm I'm caught up, but like still like 5 issues. Well, so I can't say I'm caught up.
Well, Gideon Falls
on
is
the
still,
last.
it's still ongoing, right? As of speaking.
Yeah, there's only a couple issues left. Issue 27 or 28 is the last one. There's only a couple issues left.
Yeah.
But it's just really strange, and like the artist really makes the series pop, and also it's kind of talking about it, earlier. This comic is going to be a TV show.
Oh yeah, it seems ripe for
I'm not
that.
sure. Yeah, it's the right kind of weird and crazy, and like it's not overly gory or bloody, but it's like psychological horror and the weirdness of like trying to figure out like what's real, what's fake, and what's actually going on in this world.
Yeah,
really like it.
It is one of those things I know that's hard to discuss without spoiling things.
Yeah, but that's kind of it. It's about the Black Barn's evil thing.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it up because Paul, you know Becca, so
I do.
you all do, but she doesn't really like horror stuff, but this is one of the books that I know she also is reading, so I was like, oh, maybe it's good. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. I think once it's done, I'll do what I did with Lock and Key. Once it's done, I'll just sit down and read the whole thing, because that's how I did that. I find I prefer my comics when I can just kind of read them all at once, which is why I like trade paperbacks for a lot of things. But Gideon Falls seems really, really cool. And again, that's another an image book right now. Don, you got one?
Yeah, actually, it was one that Greg recommended for me. I didn't even know about it until he told me. Leave the Light On, which is that after reading, I didn't read the newest one, but because they're only up to 3 right now, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But that first issue left me just like wow, because it has to deal with it's like a serial killer, and just the stuff that goes on in it without ruining anything, it just really messes with your head. So it's not just your typical hack and slash type horror comic. It actually kind of gets to you a little bit, and I'm just like, wow, that's messed. When I got done reading it, I was like, that's pretty messed up. And
Gotcha.
And I mean, like I said, Greg recommended that one, and it's actually really good. I just wish they had more than just the 3 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that stinks sometimes about monthly comics is you got to wait that month
or longer.
Yeah, sometimes longer. Yeah, some books are painful like that. I feel bad for the people still waiting for Saga to be done. They're like multiple year-long hiatus now.
It's supposed to be 1 year, and that became like 2 or 3 years.
We're over 2 now.
Yeah,
that stinks. That's why I like when we're talking about things that like are kind of over and ended. I was like, I kind of like that. So I can be like, hey, you want to read this book? Like, here's all you need, and then you don't need to worry about anything else, and it's done, and you can enjoy it as is. But yeah, I think that does it for me. I don't know unless you guys got any other books you want to.
I think we covered a good amount. I think.
Yeah, we cut a lot of different flavors of horror there too.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be something there for you if you're listening to this. If any of this sounds interesting, just give us a call and we'll make it happen for you. And there's a ton of stuff we did not cover. We have a whole horror section right now. It's at the front of the store, but I've got a whole horror collection I keep on our website year round, and I maintain it because there's always horror books coming out. And
yeah, we didn't even touch on the Archie horror stuff. We didn't even touch on that, and that's a whole other thing too.
That's a whole
Vampirella and Red Sonja with Betty and Veronica.
Yeah.
Well, I think Greg's talking about like Jughead the Hunger and Vampironica and After.
Well, that too, but that's also Red Sonja. I forgot about that one. Red Sonja.
I forgot about that one too. There's so many books.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if this was something you were interested, hopefully we gave you a place to get started. And welcome to the world of reading horror comics. Some of the earliest stuff I read were those Swamp Things and Sandman when I started getting into comics for real. When you're kids, you pick them up every once in a while when you're at the grocery store or whatever. Or occasionally I would go to the comic book store as a treat and I can pick out a couple of books. But when I got a little bit older and became a teenager, and I can kind of have more of my own agency in my life, so when I started reading comic books more regularly, and I got a Wizard magazine that was like the 100 best graphic novels, and I kind of used that as my guide. And that's how I discovered some of these books, and they've been some of my favorites of all time. So hopefully maybe grabbing one of these will help you enjoy your Halloween season, even though episode is going up the day before Halloween. But you can live this all year round. I'm probably going to read Gideon Falls when that's done. I'm going to pick up the trades. I'm excited to check that out. Some of those Joe Hill books sound pretty awesome, actually.
Oh yeah, they're good.
I'm definitely going to check out the Plunge and Daphne Byrne at least. Those sound up my alley. Basketball Head sounds like the right kind of weird too. I'm pretty excited. So that's going to do it for us this week. I don't think we can. No, yeah, we did decide what we're doing for our next episode. We're going to talk about Harley Quinn. So also continuing everything being horrifying. Nah, just kidding. I will get into it in the episode, but I'm not a particular fan. But we have a couple of people who are huge fans, and they want to convince me otherwise. So thank you, Mike. I want to thank my guests for coming out again and spending their afternoon with me, talking comic shop. So till next time, be safe.
Thanks.